Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tripartisan. Today we are doing our second episode on women's rights, women's issues, feminism, and everything that has to do with ladies. On the topic of ladies, I invited on my two guests from the last episode. Yeah, it's been so long since we recorded that one. It's probably been a couple months for you, but it's been an hour for us.
Not even.
Not even.
Like 20 minutes.
But anyway, I'd like to once again introduce them. I have the lovely, talented, beautiful, smart, ambitious, perfect, passionate Riley Hudson.
Oh, are we switching it up this time?
Much.
Oh my god, we love Riley in this
so
house.
blessed.
Are we gonna do
here.
it back and forth every podcast?
I am too blessed to be stressed.
Where did that come from? That's
Georgia?
like
My heart.
Georgia? I'm from Georgia. Okay, whatever. Don't pinch my cheek, please.
Fact check.
Kate's actually not from Georgia. I was born in Kenya. Surprise. Anyway.
Know anybody else from Kenya?
Yeah, Obama. Anyway.
That was the joke. I
Hey,
get that.
hey,
Yeah.
are you from Africa? Can you not?
I hate her.
Okay. The silence that followed that is all I'm gonna leave in. Just that silence.
I'll edit in some crickets.
Chirp, chirp. Can you stop? This is what happens when you give them food. They get even more lunatics. Anyway. So, also joining us, we have the beautiful, the talented, the wonderful, the blue-eyed... You have blue eyes, right?
Yeah, sort of.
Close enough. The blue-eyed Bella Marshall herself. Yay, Bella.
Thanks, Kate. Should we give Kate an intro?
Oh, yeah. You guys can
So
introduce
here-
me.
The author, the producer, the writer, the amazing, talented, beautiful, smart, special, just amazing, just awesome, just so freaking good, Kate.
So I'd just like to put on the record that Riley's trying to get in her good graces because she's jealous of me and Kate being besties now.
Actually,
I'm right.
Okay.
Actually-
Kate,
This isn't Fight Club.
Actually,
let's save that for
actually,
Can we save that for after? Behave yourself.
she started it.
All right. Anyway, so what you might remember from our last podcast.
if you didn't hear it, go back and listen
yeah,
before you
go back
listen to
and
this
listen,
one. We didn't
'cause-
fact check. We have to fact check, Kate.
No. Don't worry about it, baby. I got this. I know what I'm doing, Bella. Anyway, but I would like to refer back to that one where we discussed the nature of feminism, the modern feminism movement, the history of feminism a little bit, our own political alignments, and toxic masculinity, as well as sexual assault and violence toward women and men alike in modern society. So, but today, an hour later, barely, we are going to be talking about a new set of issues. So you don't need to know what we talked about from the last time, but it's important. So
It helps.
Exciting.
it helps to know. I would take it into account if I were you.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we are going to be talking about today is women's rights and feminism in the education and workforces. So real quick, I just want to ask you guys a question. Do you feel that at this point in your life, and this doesn't have to be in school or in work for the two of you that work, but like, do you ever feel like there was a point in your life where you were specifically discriminated against based on your gender?
I don't know if discriminated is the word I would use.
Yeah.
Definitely treated differently
Mm-hmm.
because I was. Oh, that's my drink. No, it's not.
Okay, Bella, can you focus, please?
Hey.
I didn't want your germs, Kate.
Okay,
She's
anyway,
sick.
go ahead. I am still sick.
So
Yeah.
an hour later, you're still sick,
Uh-huh.
Kate.
Yeah. Anyway.
But I know for a fact that one of the reasons I made it onto a STEM team
Mm-hmm.
was because they wanted women on the team.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason I was on the roster. And then in
Yeah.
regards to that, they made a male versus female team, and there was definitely some things said,
Yeah.
I think.
About the
Yeah.
the fact that there was a female versus male team.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think taking so many STEM classes,
Yeah.
there's definitely been a major divide. And then, like, so for instance, like, freshman year, we did something called Sumo Bots where you, like, battle robots.
Yeah.
And me and my other female partner,
Yeah.
we won out of our whole class. And this class had, like, senior boys and, like,
and you were freshman girls.
yeah. So people were not happy when we won. And it's just, especially I've seen it in the STEM community, how big the divide is.
Yeah. Particularly, I'll add on to that for me. I am currently enrolled in high school, as we all are. But
Really?
I'm specifically enrolled in a AP computer science class, in which I am one of 2 girls out of our entire school that is taking that class this year. 2 girls, which is, like, kind of crazy to think about, in terms of just, like, how few that is. Because it's like a, I think it's probably like a 20 to 25 to 1 ratio from boys to girls. And then me and Bella are both also in our school's kind of IT program. Bella and I, whatever. Bella and I are both enrolled in our school's IT program, and
there are definitely more males, but I also think there's way, way, way more males that apply than women. Like, I think
that's true. And I think that goes back to what we kind of talked about last episode, where we have, like, affirmative action and promoting these things to women because women think that they're not allowed to do it because they are women.
Yeah, and then there's certain times where, like, it's, like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm excited that I get to do these things, but it kind of makes me feel bad that sometimes it makes me feel like I'm only getting to do some of these things because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
And I don't
and
want
you
that.
Don't want, I think also it's especially kind of disheartening because people will tell me that I'm only able to do these things because I'm a woman.
Right.
And will say, like, oh, if you were a man, they wouldn't have given you second thought, which is in and of itself pretty sexist because I think they're taking a look and saying, well, no woman could have gotten here on her own.
Oh, big facts.
She needs to have some sort of affirmative action or some form.
Ovaries. May I mention?
Ovaries, yes. Anyway, but Riley, do you think you've ever been kind of discriminated against or whatever?
Not discriminated like Bella said, but definitely treated differently because I worked at, I guess, at a camp where I was maintenance with a fellow boy of mine, and our boss. We would be on many tasks with him, and he would mansplain a lot to me. Yeah, and but not to him. And he would, for example, we were setting up a cabinet, and he would ask my friend, like, hey, can you hand me the screwdriver? Can you hand me this? And I was I was literally just sitting there without a task, and he was basically talking to him the whole time, thinking, like, oh, you're a girl, you wouldn't know, like, what? Yeah. Like, I mean, I didn't know what was going on, but, like,
it's because you're a girl that he said you wouldn't know.
Yeah. And even in the classroom, it's things such as simple as, like, teachers saying, hey, any boys that want to help move?
Right. Yeah, that's...
I saw, like, a meme the other day that was, my teacher, I need 3 strong boys to help move this desk, and then feminist me, like an 8-year-old feminist me, and then, like, a guy deadlifting a boulder or something. It was really funny, but I think that's a very true thing in education and in the workforce. There's kind of this sort of, women are meant to do certain things and men are meant to do certain things. It's just a pretty common thing. So going into education a little deeper, the statistic comes from Oxfam, so thanks to them. But 2/3 of children who are denied schooling today are women, and 75% of the world's illiterate population are women. How do we feel about that, ladies?
I think this goes back to kind of our first podcast where we discussed about how so many countries and other areas of the world, women are still at such a disadvantage. And don't get me wrong, like, women are still... thought lesser of than men here in America, but in other countries, like, so much. Like, some women, it's illegal to go to school. Malala, for instance, was shot in the head for going to school.
Right.
And it's just, like, insane to think, like, why do you... Like, what is the real reason that men don't want these women getting an education? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I think a lot of the reason why people do deny education to women is because they're trying to control women.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's easier to like tell someone like, oh no, you're lesser than I. Or it's easier to tell someone like, oh no, like you don't deserve basic human rights when they don't have an education.
Exactly.
Men in these nations and across the world are terrified to tell women how the world works because they're afraid of them taking over, pretty much.
By not allowing women to learn even how to read, it's just keeping them at a disadvantage and keeping them held down in just another way. And it's just so interesting because some people are just so afraid of change.
That's very true. Very true.
Just the change in society.
A true statement.
So used to the norm.
Mm-hmm. The norm, yes.
So in 2019, this is a pay scale related thing. It also, part of the statistics for this come from payscale.com and the other part come from the U.S. Census Bureau. In 2019, women earn roughly 79 cents to every dollar that a man makes. In the same job and qualifications, women still make 98 cents to the dollar, which to a lot of people is like, oh, 98 cents? That's fine, that's no difference. But to the dollar, 98 cents is kind of a big disparity, and this isn't factoring in race right now. We'll talk about race later on. But this is just white women and white men. It's $1 for white men, and it's 98 cents for white women. And the average American salary is $59,039 a year. So that's what a man would be making under this kind of under this ratio. But what a woman would make is $57,858. So almost $2,000 less every year.
Yeah, I had friends that when I told them this fact, they didn't believe me and they thought that I was making this up.
Yeah.
They thought that I was like over exaggerating, and when I told them that women get paid less than men, they just refused to believe that. They like made fun of me for saying that, and I just don't think that men are realizing that this stuff happens all the time.
Yeah,
I think a lot of it is because they don't have the personal experience and they can't see it firsthand.
That's true.
But at this time in our lives, McDonald's pays everyone the same amount. Like, little places that you're working generally
pay everyone the same amount.
Exactly. And then it gets, I mean, I'm sure it still happens, like, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I know, I'm sure it still happens. Or even, like, with raises or promotions.
Yeah.
But looking at a bigger scale, it's generally more when, you get into more corporate or big
That's
business.
true. It's generally... and I do want to make note of this because it's an important thing when you talk about pay scale and the gender wage gap. Women do so much more unpaid work than men. And I'll explain what that means. So girls ages 5 to 14 spend an average of, together combined, they spend 550 million hours every day on household chores. And boys spend 160 million hours every day on household chores. That comes from one.org, by the way. And so that's what I mean by unpaid work, because we have women who don't have jobs because they're expected to be the household workers and to be the domestic workers. So yes, that's why when you see the 79 cents to $1, a lot of people are like, oh, but that's not for the same jobs and that's not for the same qualifications. Yeah, that's true, but you have to take into account that women are working more hours than men on average, even when they have the same job, because women go home and do more domestic work than men, but they're still getting paid less because those aren't paying jobs.
I'd be interested to see the statistic just in America, which obviously is the more privileged society. I'd be interested to see that statistic.
There's still a disparity.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
sure.
no, don't get me wrong. I know
Fact
that
check. But I'm sure there's still a disparity between the amount of work that women do in the household and the amount of work that men do in the household, because you see it every single day. Like, my mom hasn't had a job since she was in her late 20s, early 30s maybe, because, she worked, she was a manager for many years, And she put my dad through med school, pretty much, like, paying their expenses and stuff and helping him with residency. She didn't pay for his med school, by the way, but, like, she was living with him when he wasn't making money.
Supporting.
Yeah, she was supporting their kind of combined household together and stuff. But she doesn't make any money now because she's a domestic worker. She's a mom, and she has to, like, she's raised 3 kids, and that's her job.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, in a perfect world, we'd have a way to pay women for that.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously that's not a system that we have today. And I don't want to get into, like, things like a UBI, Universal Basic Income, or anything, because that's a topic for another day. But I think, like, it's interesting to take into account that women are doing far more work than men are, but they're not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also had another friend that just did not believe that being a mom and being stay-at-home mom
Yeah.
was not hard.
Imagine.
They literally, these were his exact words. I want to become a stay-at-home mom because it is not hard and you get to do whatever you want all day.
That's
And
how
literally,
that works.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Being a stay-at-home mom is one of the hardest jobs to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people realize and give mothers credit for that.
Oh, yeah.
And there was such a big, in the 50s and 60s when it was so common for women to be stay-at-home mothers, there was such a big mental health crisis because so many of these women were
Oh, my God, yeah.
were doing this unpaid work and doing what they felt was unfulfilling because they're sitting there and then their family just expected them to do it. And it was as if they felt their lives were meaningless in the sense that nobody was thanking them, nobody was appreciating them, they weren't getting paid, so what were they doing the work for?
Yeah.
Betty Friedman.
For Dan.
There,
you know
Betty
what I mean.
Semantics. Yeah, fact check.
Betty Friedan.
Friedan.
Wrote the feminine mystique.
Yes.
Anyway, but
Friedman.
I know it was like along those lines.
something with an F.
Yeah.
Franks. I don't know. Franks. It could be anything.
Hot dogs.
But yeah, it's a very interesting to take that kind of thing into account. Now I want to move on to race affecting wage as well, which is technically, some people would say, oh, but that's not about women's rights or feminism, but
It is.
as we discussed in our last podcast, it is. So black women make an average of 74 cents to the dollar and 97 cents to the dollar in the same job and qualifications as white men.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, again, an even bigger pay disparity. So if you see there being around a $1,000 to $2,000 difference in jobs for men and women of the same race, now you have a disparity of even more than that, maybe even 3 to 4. Fact check. But almost $3,000 to $4,000 a year, which when you take into account the pink tax, which we'll go into, it's even more money women are losing every year just being women. So the pink tax, for those of you who don't know, like Riley sitting next to me.
I know what it is now.
Is
because I whispered it.
No,
so
because
women
I remembered.
So women's products, all sorts of them, but particularly feminine products, and also the same products that men would use, such as multivitamins or beauty products, things like that, are far higher in prices or lower in quality for the same price as men's goods. The only place where I've seen it be a disparity where men's goods are typically more expensive are razors, but we can all agree that men's razors are typically much higher quality than women's razors.
Many women actually go to as far as purchasing men's razors instead of women's because they are such better quality.
Razors, which I think is like ridiculous because you're giving women more disposable, more like low quality goods that are going to break or wear down over time, or you're giving them far less for their money, or you're just charging them more in the first place, and then we're also paying them less.
Literally taking advantage of something that we can't control.
Yeah.
Like,
unless you want us all bleeding on the streets.
Yeah. So that's another interesting thing that a lot of feminists have brought up in recent years is that tampons and pads and other feminine products are taxed as a luxury item, which I do want to make a clarification because a lot of people are confused about that. Toilet paper is also taxed as a luxury item, but something that is not taxed as a luxury item is Viagra, which makes no sense to me because the only reason that's not taxed is because it's a prescription drug. But we all kind of know that there's more of a, I'll say, need for feminine products than
need
there is.
Need is an understatement.
Need is an understatement.
Yeah.
You can't just live your life without tampons and stuff.
Unless you're a male.
Unless you're a man, of course.
Yes, and obviously some women try to combat that with Diva cups and other things.
But those are like $40.
Those are still like $50, $60 to purchase.
Like a pack of tampons, I think like a little box of them costs about $7, and there's probably like 10,
maybe. And that's if you get probably lower quality ones.
That's like a day.
But like for people who
care about the environment and want to get like organic ones,
it's even more. And then for people who can't pay those price tags, a lot of women who are homeless or women who don't have jobs or women under the poverty line don't even buy anything and just kind of call in sick from work or whatever they have to do every time that they go through that, which is crazy.
We can't have women free bleeding on the streets, folks.
Yeah, you know. You need, like, I think the thing is we need to reform the way that we tax goods in this country. Because, yes, there are certain things that are luxury items. And I do agree that, like, you can tax makeup as a luxury item. You can tax hair care as luxury items. But don't tax something like that as luxury items. Like, I don't know if we do, but do we tax, like, diapers for babies as luxury items?
I don't think so.
Probably not, but I don't know.
Fact check.
Fact check.
And also, in the military, I don't know I can't remember the specific statistic because it was like 2 years ago when I did this project, but I did a project on kind of some stuff in the military and some of the costs, and they're spending, like, I want to say over $500,000. Again, fact check. Like, over $500,000 on Viagra alone. Yeah,
I've heard about that, which is crazy. And also, I'm pretty sure the military doesn't even provide those products for women. Fact check. But I would not be surprised if they did not.
No, and it's just about, and then they won't pay for gender reassignment surgery and things of that nature, but they'll pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for Viagra, which is not a necessary.
It's not a necessary item.
Yeah. It's not a necessity.
Yeah. And also another thing is to look into prisons where there is kind of a quota on the amount of pads and tampons that you're allowed to have. I think it's like a crazy small number.
Yes.
Like it's like seven or something for every month.
And like that's...
Are they trying to kill the women?
Because toxic shock syndrome obviously is not going to allow for that.
Yeah. And also just general cleanliness. Yeah. And generally, like, comfort. And I think a lot of people say, like, oh, well, if you don't want to have your discomfort taken away, don't commit a crime. But I think we need to realize...
It's human rights. Yeah. Basic human rights.
Prisoners are humans still, and they are still citizens. And a lot of people talk about this when they talk in regards to, like, should prisoners be allowed to vote? Which... yes, because if you give the government a way to take away the citizenship and the human rights of the people, why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't an oppressive, I'm not going to say who, but why wouldn't an oppressive...
orange man?
It's Donald Trump.
Why wouldn't an oppressive political figure, why wouldn't an oppressive regime, as it were... take advantage of that system to take all the naysayers. Typically, people who are against this tend to be women and people of color, and put those people into jail where they are stripped of their human rights and then stripped of their ability to get their human rights back, and then stripped of their ability to have even any say in how the government runs.
And fact check, but I'm like 99% sure that there are more African American people in prisons.
100%.
Okay,
100%.
Cool. Glad. Yeah. And it's just ridiculous because so then you're you're taking out that huge African American or minority vote,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what people want to happen.
Yeah. The reason why the prison system would run in a way where prisoners are not allowed to vote is because the government wants a way to be able to take away citizenship of their citizens and to take away the voting power of people that they want to, silence.
Yes.
But Riley just whispered kill. But next statistic, so only 3% of women ages 45 plus work at the executive level. That's the highest percentage of women who work at the executive level by age, by the way, compared to 8% of men. So this kind of goes back into the workforce. Oh, and by the way, that came from payskill.com as well. But that kind of goes back into the workforce question of you see women being denied positions because they're either seen as too emotional or just because classical misogyny and everything's a boys' club. Yeah. Or saying things like, oh no, these women don't have experience. Like, this woman's never been a CEO. We can't make her a CEO. But then again, they hire men who haven't been CEOs. Or it's much easier to become a CEO if you're a man. Because Time Magazine put out a piece in 2014 titled The 6 Feminist Myths That Will Not Die, which I read. Oh, by the way, another thing. We talked about in our last episode the book The War on Boys. This article is written by the same author. Yeah.
That one hurt.
Yeah. In which they made a claim that male privilege is a myth. And that the fact is...
This is a woman writing this.
Although only 24 women are CEOs of the Fortune 500, so out of 500, only 25, or 24, even less, are women. 90% of workers who die from workplace incidents are men. So that's related, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, men aren't privileged because they have these jobs where you're more likely to die. Well, in and of itself, the ability to be hired for these hard labor and intensive jobs is a point of privilege. The reason why more men die from these accidents is because women don't get hired for these jobs, because those jobs are usually physical jobs. Those jobs are usually like moving things and like breaking bricks
and
or whatever. Coal mining, yeah.
Roofing.
Yeah, and those are usually pretty good jobs. They're consistent jobs, they're sustainable, they're secure, and they make pretty good wages. Like something, if you've ever seen Parks and Rec, if you've ever seen Parks and Rec, they talk about how garbage men have very good wages and good job, and good job.
And good job.
And it's a good job, but women get hired way less than men do in these fields because these jobs require a certain amount of physicality, not much, and we assume that women can't do those kinds of jobs. So that's the reason why you have the disparity of men dying more often in these workplace incidents, which obviously I'm not saying to die for your company is like a privilege or anything, but it's a privilege to be able to get these jobs.
To have the opportunity,
Yeah, it's a privilege to have the opportunity to die.
Yeah. And it goes back to like, it's completely unrelated to the amount of CEOs. Like, can you, like, the privilege that comes from being a CEO is so immense. Like, you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know how much some of these people make a year. Like, a lot of people think, like, an average CEO at, like, one of the big companies probably makes, like, I don't know, $600,000 a year? No, they're making multi-millions.
And it's just ridiculous to think that these people can make more in a month than most people make in a lifetime.
Yeah. More than whole families make in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy. And I want to know, like, what do you guys feel about that type of journalism?
Leave a comment down below.
I was asking you, actually. Oh. But yeah, leave a comment down below if you want to talk about anything. But Bella, how do you feel about it?
No, Riley, you want to start it off?
How do you feel about, like, that type of journalism and, like, people saying, like, feminist myths and stuff like that?
It's not right.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I think that
It's
not
bad.
right.
Yeah. It's so bad.
Yeah. No. It's a no.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, we're going to move on now to our next subject, which is a very hot button issue. And I don't know quite when they're going wild in here. I don't know what's happening. I don't know quite when this is going to be live, this podcast. But who knows what will have changed since then in the laws and things. But we're gonna be talking about abortion and contraception. The big dogs. All right. So first, I don't know why I invited you two. Anyway.
Yo, let's get our abortion on.
Use contraception.
Yeah. Anyway, but I'm gonna ask you guys if you feel comfortable with answering on air. By the way, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice? Riley,
Pro-choice.
explain why.
Because it's sorry for going off, but it's a natural woman's right to choose what happens to her body, and I don't think that a man should be allowed to make that choice for this woman. I think it's her body, it's her choice, and it's her baby that in some cases that she doesn't even want because of rape and incest and
any other factor.
And I think that a woman has the right to choose what happens to her body 100%. And it's not even killing an actual child. There's a huge difference between killing a child and
we talked about in the last episode infanticide and stuff, which is very different from abortion, because infanticide is killing a born child, and abortion typically is just removing the ability of cells to become a fetus.
Yeah.
So.
And you have no idea how much a woman has to go through for being pregnant for 9 months. That's a lot to handle, and I'm not saying that a woman can't handle it. I'm just saying that
obviously women do it every day.
Yeah, right. But I also think that people shouldn't be ashamed to have an abortion or talk about having an abortion. And I think that, again, like I said, that it's a woman's right to choose what happens to her body.
Very true.
Yeah.
All right, Bella, you have anything to say?
Definitely pro-choice.
I thought you were going to say life. I was like, sorry. I did not know that.
Fact check?
No, so definitely pro-choice. Because pro-choice doesn't mean pro-abortion. It means pro-right to choose.
Yeah.
You can be pro-choice and never get an abortion. You can be pro-choice and still think that abortions are bad. But pro-choice is about giving people the right to choose that, like, for themselves.
Yeah.
And giving them the options of being able to have the abortions. And not necessarily, I doubt many pro-choice people are against abortions, but it's still about giving the women the right to choose whether or not they want to have that baby. You don't know their circumstances, and there shouldn't be, especially old white men, getting to say, and other people getting to say, like, oh no, I don't think it's, like, right.
Even other women too.
Yes, other women too.
Can't tell other people. Yeah.
No, you shouldn't be able to tell another person. Nobody should be able to tell another person what they can and cannot do with their body, especially their future, because a baby affects you for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And until quite often use the idea of, well, religion for a reason that abortions are bad, and not everyone is the same religion as you, so you need to give people that choice.
Hear me out, but I'm 99.9% sure, and we'll get a fact check on this, the Bible doesn't really say anything about abortion.
Abortions weren't
a thing.
No.
Women had babies just, like, all over the place, and also, like, babies just, like, died all the time. That wasn't really a thing then. And also, women were getting pregnant at, like, 3, and it was okay.
Yeah, and not only religion, but they're also using adoption as a reason that people should not abort. But until the foster care system, until adoption,
such a good point.
Like, the foster care system is a mess.
Broken.
Like, kids are getting abused, kids are getting neglected all the time, and until that is fixed, I don't think any sane person can put their child into, without extreme circumstances, can put their child into that full faith, knowing that child is going to succeed. That child is going to get adopted, and it's just so unfortunate that so many people don't see that. And also, another thing about, what was I gonna say?
I don't know.
And I was gonna say about being, oh, no.
Okay.
I'll come back. We'll circle back.
I'm gonna talk for a little bit. So a lot of people, when they're talking about abortion in a modern context, and pretty much since the 70s, they've been talking about the case Roe versus Wade, or Roe v. Wade, as it's called. And this was in 1973, and it was decided 7-2. That was the voting factor. So 7 voted for the bill and for this amendment, and 2 people voted against. So clear majority there, and it was based on the 14th Amendment and a woman's right to privacy, which, if we look at HIPAA law in America, legally, I'm pretty sure that all of these new abortion bans or abortion whatever they want to call it, because they all say it's not an abortion ban when it clearly is, all of these things violate those laws and violate already pre-decided Supreme Court cases from centuries ago, or not centuries, but decades. And also, in 2003 was the last time that Roe versus Wade was challenged, and it still was upheld, vote 5-4. So thank you to George W. Bush for trying his best to get abortion restricted and failing miserably in the process. It was very funny to read up on this, because his bill, and I read portions of it, is the most pseudoscience, non-medical description of everything I've ever heard. His bill describes abortion primarily as a brutal and very invasive process. I don't know if you guys know the logistics of how most abortions happen. You go into the doctor, you get a pill, you bleed for a little bit, and that's it. That's pretty much what happens nowadays, unless it's like an emergency, situation where it needs to be removed far after that date. But his bill describes it as pulling out a fetus that's already fully formed, which is not legal already, I'm pretty sure, unless it's a medical
emergency
issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with that, one of the things is restricting abortions. It's about restricting safe abortions. People are gonna have abortions no matter what. It's just whether they are in a doctor's office where it is clean, infection-free, safe, under supervision, or if they're in a back alley with a stinking coat hanger. And that's a real thing that people used to do because they didn't have...
And it's still a thing, and it's going to become more of a thing with the more bans that happen.
Yes, and this can be a fact check, but what I have been told and what I've read on, the heartbeat bill that is currently in circulating, that was made to be very extreme. That was made to be over the top.
So that it would get taken to the Supreme Court and they could challenge Roe v. Wade once again and hopefully fail miserably. But we do have I believe, conservative majority in the Supreme Court right now.
Now with,
with who, but
Donald Trump.
We were talking about Brett Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh.
But because of Donald Trump,
thanks a lot.
So actually, an interesting statistic, because a lot of people seem to think that, abortion is more prevalent now, and it is not. So, in 1995, there was 1.2 million abortions in America. In 2015, there is only 600,000. So, here's the deal. A lot of people, whenever they talk about stuff like this, and when they talk about contraception particularly, and also what we've been taught at our school, those of us who have done the health program at our school, you learn abstinence-only education. They have people come in and say, no, just abstinence. But when you teach just abstinence, you get more abortion. And so it's very interesting to watch these pro-life groups say, no, you can't use condoms, you can't use Plan B and stuff like that, but then turn around and say, but also you can't have abortions either.
Yes.
It's what do you want to happen?
Do you think the decrease is mainly because a lack of access to abortion clinics? Do you think it's more of an education? Do you think do you think it is?
I don't think that there's been, especially in 2015, because we didn't have any of these abortion bans going on then, it's much more a decrease because of access to contraception has been, and also education has been increased thoroughly.
Most definitely.
But, you know, it's very interesting because I think that we should look at a country like Iceland and their, at least I'm pretty sure it's Iceland, but in their kind of abortion debate, because in Iceland there's only one, I believe, prevalent pro-life group, and instead of going outside of abortion clinics or Planned Parenthood, which isn't even really an abortion clinic, which we'll get into, but instead of going outside of that and shaming women who go in to receive care, or instead of basically like attacking abortion, they promote safe sex, and they promote like contraceptive use, and they promote education and not just abstinence education.
And I think, especially in America, pro-choice would agree with that and say, still be safe, still use contraceptives, but this is, in the end, if something still does happen. So I think that would still line up pretty darn well.
The thing is a lot of these, no, you shouldn't be having abortions groups, don't realize that their method of trying to attack the problem or whatever is not effective, clearly. Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day. If, like, there's pros and cons to teaching abstinence, and there's pros and cons to teaching safe sex, because if you're teaching abstinence, then you're not telling kids, like, what could happen, or, like, how to have safe sex, but when you're teaching safe sex, you're kind of promoting the idea that having sex is okay, which it is. Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But, and, I'm just saying, like, there might be a higher rate of STDs, or there might be a higher, like...
But not necessarily. It's dependent, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's some proven things that say that the states that teach safe sex over abstinence,
they have a lower rate. Yeah.
Fact check.
But, you know, we live in Ohio, which I'm kind of timid to say, but also I do want to bring up that it's not just our school's policy on how they teach health. It is the entire state's policy.
And there's no saying that you can't in the same lesson teach that abstinence is good and so is safe sex. You're allowed to say one way of having safe sex is being abstinent. You're allowed to say that.
That's
it's just
the most
about
effective way.
giving students the options, just so they're known, so they're educated, so not 50 years down the line they're still thinking, oh, I gotta be abstinent, or 50 years down the line they're thinking, oh, if I just, there's no way that I can get...
Right. Yeah. It's like that one episode of Parks and Rec where they were teaching safe sex.
So an interesting thing about abortion real quick is this is coming from the CDC, but 65.4% of abortions are performed at the 8th week or earlier, which, as we all know, heartbeats develop at the 6th week, but nothing else
and
does, really.
Let's keep in mind, so in the area that we live, at one point there were a lot of billboards saying, this development starts at however many weeks. Hearings develops.
There still are. There's one by the airport that drives me crazy.
Yeah, and let's just talk about how manipulative these companies are being in these, because
use pathos.
Whatever, Riley. This might be my English project.
I'm an AP
but
Professor Giovanni.
Professor Giovanni.
But hi, Sarge.
You gotta think about how manipulative people are being, because people that aren't educating themselves on the issues, they see a billboard and they see these statistics and they're thinking, oh my gosh, abortion must be so bad. But in reality,
that's not common.
Saying eyesight starts developing at 10 weeks or whatever, that's two cells coming together that can become the eye. That's not the baby can see. People don't realize at 8 weeks, if you bring a baby out of
the vagina.
The uterus is what I was going to say, Kate. There's going to be... that baby's never going to be able to survive. That baby would not be able to, there's no way... It's a clump of cells. That's really what it is.
So, another thing, 700 women still die every year from pregnancy complications in the U.S., which seems like a small number, but when you take into account that we are a very advanced society, and this is a very advanced country, there's a lot more all over the world. But 700 women are still dying every year because of pregnancy complications, and it would be even higher if things like emergency C-section and abortions were not allowed for mothers' health.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, are emergency C-sections not allowed?
No, they
No,
are.
no, no.
Oh, okay.
But like a lot of people who are on the pro-life side say like, oh, well, you can't do emergency C-sections that are, you know, like supposedly going to end the baby's life.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, that's a thing.
So I would be dead right now if that was the case.
Yeah, but basically, Riley just went, yes! Anyway, but like,
it's fine, we've known each other for a long time.
emergency C-section not meaning like the baby is okay to be taken out, but like, say the baby was not fully formed, and if it was taken out of the mother, would die. A lot of pro-life groups are like, oh, you shouldn't be able to do that.
I'm sorry, but you're literally asking to kill the mother.
Yeah.
If she needs,
Yeah.
it's called an emergency C-section for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know that your country has gone down a wrong path when a fetus has more rights than the women.
Yeah.
Yeah. But whatever.
Let's also make it clear that there's risk with every surgery. You have an appendectomy, there's still going to be risk.
Yeah.
And so by their logic, you should not be able to have any surgery if it is at risk, if there's any risk at all of you dying.
Yeah.
Like that's...
Something interesting also that I want to bring up, because we've been going on for a while, but so condoms, a lot of people, 5.5 million women in America rely on condoms as their primary form of birth control. This is coming from the Guttmacher Institute. But did you guys know that they are only 85% effective?
I did.
I did know
I went to
Yes.
health class.
Uh-huh.
I watched Friends.
Yeah.
Only 85% effective? Why don't they tell you that?
I don't agree with that show. I don't
Riley
I don't
doesn't like
support that
Friends.
show, but I just watched the
Can we
one
have a
episode.
podcast about why Riley doesn't support Friends?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, you agree with me.
I do agree. I don't really like Friends.
That's okay.
It's
The
not
Office
a bad
sucks.
show. It's just overrated.
Sorry, Sarge.
Sorry, Sarge.
Sorry, not sorry.
The Office sucks.
Okay.
Okay, Riley, sit down. Okay, but I'd like to share a couple interesting statistics. So, 83% of Black women are at risk of unplanned pregnancy when using contraceptive methods, and or are at risk of unplanned pregnancy because they don't use contraceptive methods. But 91% of white and Hispanic and 90% of Asian women do use contraceptive methods. So there's something that a lot of people say, which is like, oh, the majority of babies who are aborted, fetuses who are aborted are African American. So it's can you not look at her like that? They're just being silly right now. Anyway, but
silly.
they say like the majority of fetuses that are aborted are African American, so abortion is ethnic cleansing, which is wrong for many reasons, because it's not white people aborting Black babies.
No.
You have a higher amount of African American women at risk of unplanned pregnancy, so you're going to have a higher rate of abortions. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of how the math works. Yeah. Common sense.
Common sense.
Also,
Common sense.
Common sense.
I'd like to bring up the fact that 57%, so a clear majority of Americans, agree with abortion in all or most cases. So when you see places that are doing these abortion bans, it's not because they're upholding what the people want, it's government, these very extremist people who are in government trying to get their, viewpoints to be the ones that are accepted by the people, when it's clearly not going to be the ones that people want, because they're trying to change the way that things are going, even though it's not what the people actually want.
That's why it is so important to get out and vote, folks.
Yep.
Your voice matters.
Very true, Bella.
Oh, word.
Yes. Also, I'd like to talk about Planned Parenthood, Riley's favorite place on earth.
My future job.
Yeah, Riley wants to
If
work
it's
there.
around.
If it's around. So, 34% and the majority of Planned Parenthood services Are you good? Okay. Riley just died. But 34% of Planned Parenthood services are providing contraceptives to women and men in the United States, and only about 3% are abortion-related services. So, in my opinion, you could take a look at that and take into account what we've been talking about, and Planned Parenthood has done more to limit abortions than any pro-life organization has ever.
Big facts.
Which is very true when you look at the facts of the situation. Because, if you take a look at, how abortion actually stops happening and doesn't just stop happening legally, it's because of contraceptive use.
It really is, and the education that comes with contraceptive use and knowing how and when to use it.
Which is what Planned Parenthood works towards, which is the exact opposite of what a lot of pro-life organizations are working towards, which is just no contraceptive use and no rights to abortion.
So are you saying that Planned Parenthood is pro-life?
No, I'm saying they're pro-choice, but in the terms of limiting how many abortions go on, they do more than these pro-life organizations.
Isn't there a rule that they have to watch what happens to the fetus when you get an abortion?
What?
You have
what
to
are
watch.
you talking about?
No, that's Riley.
Riley, that's a myth.
Riley's just over here you have to watch it? No. Riley,
I've heard that before you get an abortion, you have to watch a video explaining how and what happens to the baby.
Yeah,
that
probably.
could be true. That could be
but
true.
I don't think... Fact check, but I don't think you watch... Because, why
would you... No,
yeah.
I didn't say, you would actually watch it happen.
They are educating people on, what the actual process is.
The
but it's not about scaring people away from getting abortions. It's about limiting the amount of abortions that need to happen because less people are getting pregnant unplanned.
And I don't think anybody's sitting over here thinking, I want more abortions. Abortions are great.
Yeah.
But also, it shouldn't be that abortions could never happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But Riley. Yeah. But we're gonna move on and talk about FGM, which stands for female genitalia mutilation. Genital, the same thing. Okay, but anyway.
So excited.
So you're excited for that, Riley?
No, it was my favorite topic to discuss.
We read a book and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, in case you were wondering, they both took a women's studies class.
High five noise.
That is going to be so loud. Don't do it again. Don't do it again. Anyway.
She just...
I did just push
She just slapped my face.
I did not. I pushed you back.
Slap noise.
She just slammed my head into the wall.
Talk about violence against women. I'm abusing Riley. Yeah. But anyway, so 200 million girls and women alive today have undergone female genitalia. Can you guys not high five? I told you it's too loud.
I'm sorry.
Anyway.
It's been 3 hours of podcast.
It's been a consecutive 52 minutes. You guys have no focus. Anyway.
You're right.
Yeah. I knew it going into this. I don't know why I expected any different. Anyway.
I need some silly putty or something.
Yeah, you need to... Okay, Riley, calm down, baby. Anyway. But 200 million girls and women alive today have undergone female genital mutilation. And that
Tell them why, Kate.
Tell them why?
Why they do it?
I'm going into it, Riley.
Why they done did it, Kate? Why they done did it?
I'm getting into it. So in 30 countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia are where this is very concentrated. By the way, this is all coming from the WHO, or the World Health Organization. It has no health benefits for women and girls. It can cause severe bleeding, cysts, problems urinating, infections, complications with childbirth, increased risk of newborn deaths, and it is a non-medical procedure.
Now let's talk about, above all of that, pain. lifelong pain.
Yeah.
Lifelong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So many people have probably heard, so I'm just going to take it over for like a
Go ahead.
little quick thing. Many people have,
Go off, sis.
many people have probably heard of doctors putting in what is called the quote-unquote husband stitch, meaning that doctors will do one extra stitch when, like, if they, after childbirth, for husbands is what they would say, so that it's, I don't know, tighter or whatever that means. And that's obviously... Really? And that does not make a difference. It does not make a difference at all. That's been proven that it does not make a difference. And that causes women lifelong pain. And then if they're going to have another child, that messes things up too. And so it doesn't, and that's a form of genital mutilation that happens in the US.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
Absolutely.
It's just...
And they do it to please the husband. They do it so they rig it for, well, they...
Do you want me to go into it
real
quick?
No.
Okay.
Because the reason that they perform FGM is to reassure the husband that the woman hasn't been with another man. So you stitch up it.
Yeah.
And you only unstitch it for childbirth and when you conceive the child. So
you were being ripped open and closed back up.
For the man's benefit.
Yes. Also, it's typically done... This is coming from the UNFPA, by the way. It's usually done to control a woman's sexuality and make sex less enjoyable for women. And it's also done because these parts that are typically removed can be seen as dirty, ugly, or sinful. And in many countries, it is a prerequisite for marriage to have this done. And in a lot of societies, women are totally dependent on men for economic reasons. So you have to undergo this to have even a fighting chance of surviving in these countries.
Yeah, and there's so many countries that even where this isn't going on, many women will, on their wedding night, have to bring out the sheets and show that there was blood on them to prove that this was their first time. And not every woman bleeds during their first time having sex, so many women will, even if it is their first time, will have, I think pig's blood is what it is. Or it's a certain type of blood, like animal blood of some sort, and then lay it on the sheets just so it, it seems like that.
Yeah.
By the way, quick educational lesson for all of those who don't know. So, the hymen is the part that is typically said to, like, break or pop or bleed or whatever during sex. However, that's very inaccurate because doing sports can make it pop. It can also stay intact after many years of having sex or being sexually active.
It can quote unquote pop from riding a bike. Like you don't
and
know.
Also like doing splits, high kicks. Like there's a bunch of different ways that it can happen. It's true. If you want to watch an episode on that, you can watch Adam Ruins Everything.
Yes, great job.
Well, technically it's not him who talks about it, it's a woman. But his show, they talk about the whole thing. So I'd like to talk about the two different types, or the two most common types that,
occur.
Occur, thank you.
Yes.
So the most common types are type 1, also called clitoridectomy, which is the partial or total removal of the clitoris and or the prepuce, which is just generally the part that's supposed to make sex less enjoyable for women, and also that part can be seen as the sinful or dirty and ugly part of women's genitalia, and that's why it's removed a lot of the time. Yeah. Which is
ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's
shocking.
Something else.
Just my opinion. Men are typically, their parts are just worse than ours.
In what regard, Riley?
What are you talking about?
I'm very confused.
Remember, I have a night job.
If you don't know what she's talking about, watch the last episode. Also,
watch it.
Listen to it. Whatever. Doesn't matter.
That was just a joke.
I haven't started you money.
It was just a joke.
Okay, whatever. Type 2 is called excision, which is the partial or total removal of the clitoris and the labia minora. Not like Jewish menorah, by the way. It's like minor. Just thought I'd make that clear in case someone was confused. Well, I don't know.
I don't have a menorah down there, but don't know about you.
I mean, okay. And, you know, the amount of tissue that is removed in this kind of procedure varies wildly. And this is really a human rights issue and also a healthcare issue at its finest, to be fair. Yeah. A lot of times, people, particularly men, like to compare FGM to circumcision, which is so very wrong. And let me explain to you why. Riley is seething. Anyway, but male circumcision differs from FGM in that circumcision is considered to be benign or even beneficial in most cases. Thank you to the University of Cambridge for that one.
For cleanliness purposes, mostly.
And male circumcision can reduce the risk of cancer, HIV, and promote cleanliness, and that comes from the British Medical Journal. Yeah.
And not to mention, that's generally performed when people are babies.
Yeah.
And Kate, do you know, like, when it's generally performed on women?
It can be infancy to age 15.
Well, okay.
Even older, too.
Well, yes. But. So, basically, one of the largest things that we learned about is there's generally a whole ceremony, and I can't remember the country off the top of my head, but we read a book in our class.
It was an island.
It was, it was an island or something. Yeah. There's a country
where... It is prevalent among island and indigenous people.
Yeah, it's more of quote-unquote tribal. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Mostly Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but also, indigenous peoples of New Zealand even do it.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's, what people would call quote-unquote tribes. Yeah. And so, in this book, we read, and I'll have to get the name to you, it's a whole ceremony, and it's...
fattening hut.
Yes. It's called the fattening hut. That's what it's called.
Okay.
Yeah.
And basically, they would send these girls to these huts and seclude them, and all they had to do was just eat and eat and eat. And then at the end of this, once they gained however much weight they needed to, or looked a certain way, they would take these girls, and generally between 13 and 16, and then they would...
typically when they get their first period, this is when it is happening.
So that's, and that obviously differs, but that's 12 to 15-ish.
And they take them to the fattening hut because they believe that being fatter in that community is what attractive. A woman should look like in that tribe.
That's the base standard of beauty for them?
Yeah.
Okay. So, is that the only purpose of the fattening huts?
Yeah, pretty much, and that's just kind of how we prepare women for, adulthood.
Yeah. Which I think
child
is...
labor and...
It's
not child labor.
Pregnancy.
Pregnancy,
marriage and stuff.
And I think there's a lot of cultures and things, and in Africa specifically, I believe, I could be wrong, fact check me, there is a process where girls are a lot younger, and mothers will make these girls drink milk, and so much milk all the time. And they have these devices where they'll push down and almost and even break the girl's fingers or toes if they don't drink it. And it's to distract from they're drinking so much milk, and it their stomachs hurt so bad, and it's the mothers feel that they're distracting their kids of the pain, but these mothers and they're doing it out of love for their children so that they'll succeed and do better, but these girls are getting their fingers and their toes broken in this process.
So what's the supposed purpose of the milk drinking thing?
What is it? It's again the same thing as the fattening huts. It's just
to make
to prepare them kind of.
Which is a very interesting thing because we haven't really talked about this, but I think it's a good time to bring it up. Body image issues is a big thing in Western and also modern feminism. We have people like Jamila Jamil. Or Jamila Jamil.
I was thinking about this earlier. Yeah. In the first part of the podcast, I was going to change my answer to Jamila Jamil, but then I wasn't really thinking. Anyways.
She's pretty cool.
She's cool. She's
#IWay.
Anyway. But she and other feminists have brought up a lot of the issues with body image and also beauty standards in Western society. Yeah. But I think it's very interesting when you take into account people a lot of times make the case of oh no, it's not a societal thing, it's just people generally like the look of that better. But then you take a look at these indigenous tribes where being more plump or being more thicker, being a little thicker
with 3 C's.
With 3 C's is the norm, or what's considered to be Don't whisper thick into the mic. Or like... Everyone just got cringed out. Sorry to everyone who does not like ASMR.
I hate it.
I know you don't like it, but... Get that out of here. Anyway. Stop. Literally stop. Guys, okay, so I'm the one who has the headphones in, by the way. Neither of them have to listen to this. I'm the one who's listening to all their mouth noises.
Plot twist, we're taking the podcast over. It's gonna be ASMR now.
Bella Marshall and the incomparable Riley Hudson.
I'm gonna say incompetent.
the incompetent.
Wait.
The incompetent Bella Marshall and Riley Hudson.
Don't prove me.
Anyway, but I'd like to thank them for coming on and discussing the issues with me, as well as being silly and also like distracting me when I'm trying to like talk about serious issues the whole time. You mean the entire time we've been recording?
No.
Kate does a wonderful job at this, and we are, don't get me wrong, Riley and I are very interested in women's issues.
Yeah, very much.
We are just also very distracted
Yes.
people. And podcasting
I'm the one who, like, is the most ADD, though, so it's kind of weird that... Okay. Don't look at me. They just gave me that little, like, smirk, like, oh, really now, honey? Riley was talking earlier, and I stared out, like, in space, and
Kate,
then
that was the whole time you were talking.
Okay, whatever, I don't care. I know you don't
for the
listen
past
to me.
2 hours.
No, but but Bill and I are very, very, very interested in this. We just can't focus.
Yeah.
Vote Bella 2036.
Never vote for Bella.
Riley 2036.
You're not even old enough to run.
2038.
That's not gonna be an election year.
2030.
2040, honey. Oh my god. Okay. Anyway.
And the next episode's gonna be on voting and the process of becoming president.
It's not. Anyway, but I'd like to thank Bella Marshall for coming on. Thank Riley Hudson for coming on. I'd like to say thank you to all of the women in the world. Thank you to everyone who listened. And
hi, Mr. Giovanni.
Yeah,
Hi,
Mr. Giovanni.
What if she doesn't listen to these?
That'd be funny.
What if she doesn't listen all the way through?
Oh my gosh, Mr. Giovanni, you better listen. Did you stop it?
She can't hear. No, she can't hear you if she didn't listen all the way through.
Oh, heartbroken.
Anyway, but this concludes the women's rights portion of Tripartisan. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.